Question 1. Regulatory review indicates a need to optimize the process for handling driver logbooks within a commercial fleet operating in Ontario. Which approach best aligns with the regulatory framework governing commercial vehicle operations in Ontario? Option A. Assume that existing logbook processes are compliant and therefore do not require review when considering optimizations, focusing only on streamlining data entry. Option B. Prioritize speed of implementation by making minor adjustments to existing logbook processes without a comprehensive understanding of their regulatory implications under Ontario law. Option C. Implement process changes based solely on operational efficiency, assuming that current logbook practices are sufficient and do not require specific regulatory verification. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act and relevant Ministry of Transportation guidelines to identify any provisions that might be impacted by proposed process changes, ensuring new processes are designed to be inherently compliant or to enhance compliance. Correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough review of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act and relevant Ministry of Transportation guidelines to identify any provisions that might be impacted by proposed process changes, ensuring new processes are designed to be inherently compliant or to enhance compliance. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for efficient operations with the long-term imperative of maintaining compliance and public trust. A driver's immediate desire to complete a task quickly can conflict with the regulatory requirements designed for safety and fairness. Misinterpreting or overlooking these regulations can lead to significant penalties, reputational damage, and, most importantly, compromise safety on the roads of Ontario. Careful judgment is required to ensure that process optimization efforts do not inadvertently create loopholes or encourage non-compliance. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough review of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act and relevant Ministry of Transportation guidelines to identify any provisions that might be impacted by proposed process changes. This approach prioritizes understanding the existing legal framework before implementing any optimizations. By ensuring that any new processes are designed to be inherently compliant or to enhance compliance, the organization safeguards itself against legal repercussions and upholds its commitment to safe driving practices as mandated by Ontario law. This proactive stance ensures that efficiency gains do not come at the cost of regulatory adherence. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves implementing process changes based solely on operational efficiency without consulting the Ontario Highway Traffic Act or Ministry of Transportation guidelines. This failure to consider the legal framework is a direct contravention of regulatory requirements and demonstrates a lack of due diligence. It risks creating processes that are illegal or unsafe, leading to potential fines, license suspensions, or other enforcement actions by the ministry. Another incorrect approach is to assume that existing processes are compliant and therefore do not require review when considering optimizations. This assumption is dangerous as it ignores the possibility that current practices may have subtle noncompliance issues or that new efficiencies could inadvertently introduce them. The Ontario Highway Traffic Act is comprehensive, and a failure to scrutinize all operational aspects can lead to unintended violations. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of implementation over thoroughness, making minor adjustments to existing processes without a comprehensive understanding of their regulatory implications under Ontario law. This superficial optimization can overlook critical safety or procedural requirements stipulated by the Ministry of Transportation, potentially leading to future compliance issues and the need for costly rework. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic approach to process optimization that begins with a comprehensive understanding of the relevant regulatory landscape. In Ontario, this means consulting the Highway Traffic Act and any applicable Ministry of Transportation regulations. The process should involve identifying potential impacts of proposed changes on compliance, safety, and fairness. If a proposed optimization appears to conflict with or circumvent any regulatory requirement, it should be modified or rejected. The goal is to achieve efficiency within the bounds of the law, not at its expense. This requires a commitment to ongoing learning and a culture that values compliance as much as efficiency. Question 2. Consider a scenario where a driver in Ontario, Canada, is looking for ways to optimize their daily commute to reduce travel time. They are aware of the general traffic flow and are considering various methods to improve their efficiency on the road. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional driving standards and the regulatory framework of Ontario? Option A. Making unauthorized modifications to their vehicle that are intended to increase its speed and performance beyond standard specifications. Option B. Frequently changing lanes aggressively and tailgating other vehicles to navigate through slower traffic more effectively. Option C. Consistently exceeding the posted speed limits on highways and urban roads to make up for lost time due to traffic congestion. Option D. Thoroughly reviewing the Ontario Highway Traffic Act and Ministry of Transportation Ontario guidelines to identify legal and safe methods for improving travel efficiency, such as route planning and adherence to all traffic laws. The correct answer is D. Thoroughly reviewing the Ontario Highway Traffic Act and Ministry of Transportation Ontario guidelines to identify legal and safe methods for improving travel efficiency, such as route planning and adherence to all traffic laws. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a driver in Ontario, Canada, who is seeking to optimize their driving efficiency. The challenge lies in balancing personal convenience and potential time savings with the strict adherence to Ontario's Highway Traffic Act and its associated regulations. Misinterpreting or disregarding these regulations can lead to safety hazards, traffic violations, and potential legal repercussions, impacting both the driver and other road users. Careful judgment is required to ensure any optimization strategy is compliant and safe. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough understanding and application of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, specifically focusing on speed limits, safe passing procedures, and rules regarding lane changes. This approach prioritizes safety and legal compliance above all else. By consulting official Ministry of Transportation, Ontario resources, and understanding the nuances of traffic laws, a driver can identify legitimate methods for improving travel time without compromising safety or breaking the law. This might include planning routes to avoid known congestion points during peak hours or ensuring proper vehicle maintenance for optimal performance, all within the legal framework. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves exceeding posted speed limits to reduce travel time. This directly violates Section 128 of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, which sets maximum speed limits on various types of roads. Exceeding these limits significantly increases the risk of accidents, reduces reaction time, and can result in severe penalties, including fines and demerit points. Another incorrect approach is to engage in aggressive lane changes or tailgating to move through traffic more quickly. This contravenes sections of the Highway Traffic Act related to safe following distances and proper lane usage. Such behavior endangers other drivers, can lead to collisions, and demonstrates a disregard for the safety of others on the road. A third incorrect approach is to rely on unofficial or potentially illegal modifications to the vehicle that might theoretically increase speed or performance, but are not approved by Ontario's vehicle safety standards. This could violate regulations concerning vehicle equipment and roadworthiness, leading to fines and potential impoundment of the vehicle. Professional reasoning. Professionals in any field, including driving, should adopt a decision-making process that prioritizes legal compliance and ethical conduct. When seeking to optimize performance or efficiency, the first step should always be to consult the relevant governing regulations and guidelines. This involves seeking information from official sources, understanding the spirit and letter of the law, and considering the potential impact of any chosen strategy on public safety and the well-being of others. If a proposed optimization strategy appears to conflict with regulations or ethical principles, it should be discarded in favor of compliant and safe alternatives. Question 3. Upon reviewing an application for a driver's license renewal in Ontario, Canada, an applicant verbally discloses a recent medical diagnosis that could potentially impact their ability to drive safely. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance with Ontario's traffic regulations and public safety? Option A. Process the license renewal without further inquiry, assuming the applicant is fit to drive, unless a formal medical report is explicitly requested by the ministry. Option B. Advise the applicant to disregard the medical condition, as it is unlikely to be a concern for the license renewal process. Option C. Immediately document the disclosed medical condition and initiate the mandatory referral process for a medical review as stipulated by the Ontario Highway Traffic Act. Option D. Accept the applicant's verbal assurance that the condition does not affect their driving and proceed with the license renewal. The correct answer is C. Immediately document the disclosed medical condition and initiate the mandatory referral process for a medical review as stipulated by the Ontario Highway Traffic Act. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a driver applying for a license renewal in Ontario, Canada. The challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient processing of applications with the absolute requirement to adhere to the Ontario Highway Traffic Act and its associated regulations regarding medical fitness to drive. Failing to properly assess or document a driver's medical condition could have severe public safety implications, making careful judgment paramount. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves meticulously documenting the driver's self-declared medical condition and immediately referring the driver for a medical review as mandated by the Ontario Highway Traffic Act. This approach ensures that the licensing authority has the necessary information to assess the driver's fitness to operate a vehicle safely. The Highway Traffic Act, specifically sections pertaining to medical conditions and driving, requires that individuals disclose relevant medical information and that the Ministry of Transportation may require a medical examination to ensure public safety. This proactive referral upholds the regulatory framework designed to prevent unsafe drivers from being on the road. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves accepting the driver's verbal assurance of fitness without any further documentation or verification. This fails to comply with the Ontario Highway Traffic Act's implicit and explicit requirements for medical fitness assessment. It bypasses the necessary procedural safeguards designed to protect public safety and could lead to the renewal of a license for an individual who is medically unfit to drive, creating a significant ethical and legal liability. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the driver's disclosure as a minor issue and proceed with the license renewal without initiating the required medical review process. This demonstrates a disregard for the potential impact of the medical condition on driving ability and contravenes the spirit and letter of the Highway Traffic Act, which prioritizes safety. It prioritizes expediency over due diligence and regulatory compliance. A third incorrect approach is to advise the driver to simply ignore the condition and proceed with the renewal, suggesting it will not be noticed. This is not only unethical, but also actively encourages a violation of the Highway Traffic Act and potentially fraudulent activity. It directly undermines the integrity of the licensing system and poses an immediate risk to public safety. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role must adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and public safety above all else. This involves understanding the specific requirements of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act regarding medical fitness, recognizing the importance of accurate and complete documentation, and knowing when to escalate or refer a situation for further assessment. A systematic approach, starting with acknowledging and documenting all disclosed information, followed by adherence to established referral protocols for medical reviews, ensures that decisions are both legally sound and ethically responsible. Question 4. When evaluating a situation where a driver is running late for an appointment in Ontario and is considering their speed, which of the following actions best aligns with regulatory compliance and professional responsibility? Option A. Drive significantly below the posted speed limit to ensure maximum safety, regardless of traffic flow. Option B. Maintain the posted speed limit, accepting the possibility of arriving late. Option C. Increase speed beyond the posted limit to try and make up for lost time. Option D. Drive at a speed that feels comfortable and safe without actively checking posted speed limit signs. The correct answer is B. Maintain the posted speed limit, accepting the possibility of arriving late. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to balance the immediate need to reach a destination with the paramount importance of adhering to traffic laws designed for public safety. The temptation to speed to make up for lost time is a common pitfall, but it directly conflicts with the legal and ethical obligations of a driver. Careful judgment is required to prioritize safety and compliance over personal convenience or perceived urgency. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves maintaining a safe and legal speed, even if it means arriving later than intended. This approach prioritizes adherence to the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, which mandates speed limits for the safety of all road users. Ethically, it demonstrates a commitment to public welfare and responsible citizenship. By respecting the posted speed limits, the driver avoids creating hazardous conditions, reduces the risk of accidents, and upholds the integrity of traffic regulations. Incorrect approach is analysis. Exceeding the speed limit to make up for lost time is a direct violation of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act. This action creates a significant safety risk by reducing reaction time, increasing stopping distances, and escalating the severity of potential collisions. It is ethically irresponsible as it endangers other road users. Driving significantly below the posted speed limit without a valid reason, such as adverse weather or mechanical issues, can also be problematic. While seemingly safe, it can impede the flow of traffic and potentially frustrate other drivers, leading to unsafe overtaking maneuvers. The Ontario Highway Traffic Act requires drivers to drive at a speed that is reasonable and proper, which includes not impeding traffic unnecessarily. Ignoring the posted speed limit and driving at a speed that feels comfortable without consulting the signage is a failure to comply with specific legal requirements. The Ontario Highway Traffic Act clearly defines speed limits for different road types and zones, and drivers are legally obligated to observe these limits. This approach demonstrates a lack of attention to detail and a disregard for established safety protocols. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that consistently prioritizes legal compliance and public safety. When faced with time constraints, the first step is to assess the situation and determine if arriving on time is feasible while adhering to all regulations. If not, the professional should accept the delay and communicate any unavoidable lateness to relevant parties. The core principle is that no situation justifies compromising safety or breaking the law. This involves a conscious choice to operate within the established rules, understanding that the consequences of non-compliance extend beyond personal inconvenience to potential harm to others. Question 5. The analysis reveals that Mr. Henderson, a student at Northland Driving School, has received a speeding ticket. His instructor, Ms. Davies, is aware that Mr. Henderson was momentarily distracted by a sudden event on the road just before the speed detection. Considering Northland's traffic laws and the professional responsibilities of a driving instructor, what is the most appropriate course of action for Ms. Davies to take? Option A. Advise Mr. Henderson to disregard the speeding ticket, as it was a minor infraction and unlikely to have significant long-term consequences. Option B. Offer to pay the speeding ticket fine for Mr. Henderson to prevent any negative impact on his driving record or insurance. Option C. Advise Mr. Henderson to carefully review the ticket, understand his rights and options under Northland's traffic laws, and consider seeking legal counsel if he believes the ticket was issued in error or wishes to contest it. Option D. Contact the issuing Northland police officer to explain the circumstances and request that the ticket be dismissed due to the momentary distraction. Correct answer is C. Advise Mr. Henderson to carefully review the ticket, understand his rights and options under Northland's traffic laws, and consider seeking legal counsel if he believes the ticket was issued in error or wishes to contest it. Explanation. The analysis reveals a scenario where a Northland driver, Mr. Henderson, has been issued a speeding ticket. The challenge lies in determining the appropriate course of action for the driving school instructor, Ms. Davies, who is aware of the circumstances surrounding the alleged infraction. This situation requires careful judgment to balance the instructor's duty to their student, the driving school's reputation, and adherence to Northland's traffic laws and regulations. The best approach involves Ms. Davies advising Mr. Henderson to review the ticket carefully and understand his options under Northland's traffic enforcement system. This includes understanding the potential consequences of the speeding violation, such as demerit points and increased insurance premiums, and considering the available legal avenues for contesting the ticket or mitigating its impact. This approach is correct because it empowers Mr. Henderson to make an informed decision based on the facts and the legal framework of Northland. It respects his autonomy as an individual and avoids any misrepresentation or undue influence. Ms. Davies' role is to educate and guide, not to interfere directly with the legal process or to make decisions on behalf of Mr. Henderson. This aligns with professional ethical standards that emphasize honesty, integrity, and client empowerment. An incorrect approach would be for Ms. Davies to offer to pay the fine on Mr. Henderson's behalf. This is professionally unacceptable because it could be construed as an attempt to circumvent the legal process and potentially shield Mr. Henderson from the consequences of his actions. It also blurs the lines of responsibility and could create a perception of impropriety, potentially violating Northland's traffic regulations regarding the handling of traffic violations and the professional conduct expected of driving instructors. Another incorrect approach would be for Ms. Davies to contact the issuing officer directly to explain the circumstances and request leniency. While seemingly helpful, this bypasses the established legal procedures for contesting a ticket in Northland. It could be seen as an attempt to improperly influence the outcome of the legal process and may not be permitted under Northland's traffic laws. Furthermore, it places Ms. Davies in a position of advocacy for Mr. Henderson without proper legal standing, which could have unintended negative consequences. A further incorrect approach would be for Ms. Davies to advise Mr. Henderson to ignore the ticket, hoping it will be forgotten. This is highly unprofessional and unethical. Ignoring a traffic ticket in Northland can lead to more severe penalties, including license suspension, additional fines, and even a warrant for arrest. This advice directly contravenes the principles of responsible citizenship and legal compliance, and it would expose both Mr. Henderson and Ms. Davies to significant legal repercussions. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, adherence to regulations, and client empowerment. This involves understanding the specific laws and procedures of the relevant jurisdiction, Northland in this case, clearly communicating these to the individual involved, and guiding them towards making informed decisions within the legal framework. The professional's role is to provide accurate information and support, not to manipulate or circumvent the established legal processes. Question 6. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a client in Ontario wishes to have their vehicle modified in a way that may not comply with provincial regulations. What is the most appropriate course of action for the service provider? Option A. Suggest modifications that are of questionable legality, hoping they will not be detected. Option B. Inform the client about the specific requirements of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act related to vehicle modifications and discuss compliant alternatives. Option C. Politely decline the service without providing any explanation for the refusal. Option D. Proceed with the client's requested modification without mentioning any potential legal issues. The correct answer is B. Inform the client about the specific requirements of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act related to vehicle modifications and discuss compliant alternatives. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a client's stated preference and the potential for that preference to lead to noncompliance with Ontario's Highway Traffic Act, HTA, regarding vehicle modifications. A driver's desire to alter their vehicle for aesthetic reasons, without considering the legal implications, requires careful navigation by the service provider to ensure both client satisfaction and adherence to provincial law. Professional judgment is crucial to balance customer service with regulatory obligations. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves clearly communicating the legal requirements of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act concerning vehicle modifications. This approach prioritizes educating the client about what is permissible and what is not, thereby managing expectations and guiding them towards compliant options. This is correct because it directly addresses the regulatory framework, HTA, and upholds the ethical duty of a service provider to act with due care and diligence, ensuring that any work performed does not contravene provincial statutes. It proactively prevents potential legal issues for both the client and the business. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the client's requested modification without any discussion of legalities. This is professionally unacceptable as it demonstrates a disregard for the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, potentially leading to the client operating an illegal vehicle and facing penalties. It also exposes the service provider to liability for facilitating noncompliance. Another incorrect approach is to refuse the service outright without explaining the reasons. While avoiding noncompliance, this fails to provide the client with necessary information and misses an opportunity to educate them on legal vehicle modifications, potentially damaging the business's reputation for customer service and expertise. A third incorrect approach is to suggest modifications that are borderline or ambiguous in their legality, hoping they will pass unnoticed. This is ethically questionable and professionally risky, as it still carries a significant risk of non-compliance with the HTA and could lead to future problems for the client and the business. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a proactive and informative approach. When faced with a client request that may conflict with regulations, the decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the potential regulatory conflict, in this case, the Ontario Highway Traffic Act. 2. Clearly communicating the relevant legal requirements to the client. 3. Explaining the implications of noncompliance. 4. Collaboratively exploring compliant alternatives that still meet the client's underlying needs or desires. This ensures that advice and services are both customer-centric and legally sound. Question 7. Implementation of a new logistics contract in Ontario requires a driver to transport a large shipment of industrial machinery. Upon loading, the driver suspects that the total weight of the vehicle, including the cargo, may exceed the gross vehicle weight (GVW) limits stipulated by the Ontario Highway Traffic Act. What is the most responsible and legally compliant course of action for the driver to take? Option A. Attempt to redistribute the load within the trailer to see if the weight can be managed without a formal weigh-in, hoping to avoid delays. Option B. Contact dispatch to report the suspicion of exceeding the GVW limit and request instructions on how to proceed, potentially involving a weigh-in at a certified scale before departure. Option C. Immediately proceed to the destination, assuming the shipper has accurately declared the weight and that the vehicle can handle the load within legal parameters. Option D. Proceed to the destination, but be prepared to pay any fines if stopped and found to be overweight, viewing it as a business expense. Correct answer is C. Immediately proceed to the destination, assuming the shipper has accurately declared the weight and that the vehicle can handle the load within legal parameters. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a driver operating a commercial vehicle in Ontario, Canada. The core issue revolves around ensuring compliance with provincial regulations regarding vehicle weight limits, which are critical for road safety, infrastructure preservation, and fair competition among transport operators. Failure to adhere to these limits can result in significant penalties, including fines, vehicle impoundment, and potential loss of operating privileges. The driver must exercise careful judgment to balance operational efficiency with legal and safety obligations. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves proactively ensuring the vehicle's load is within the legal weight limits prescribed by the Ontario Highway Traffic Act and its associated regulations before commencing the journey. This includes understanding the gross vehicle weight, GVW, and axle weight restrictions applicable to the specific vehicle configuration and the intended routes. If the load is found to exceed these limits, the driver must take immediate corrective action, such as offloading the excess weight at a safe and legal location, or arranging for a reweighing to confirm the actual weight. This approach directly aligns with the driver's responsibility under Ontario law to operate a vehicle in a safe and lawful manner, prioritizing public safety and compliance with provincial statutes. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the journey despite suspecting the vehicle is overweight. This demonstrates a disregard for the Ontario Highway Traffic Act and its regulations concerning vehicle weight. It exposes the driver and the operating company to substantial fines, potential vehicle impoundment, and could lead to a review of their operating authority by the Ministry of Transportation. Ethically, it prioritizes expediency over public safety and the integrity of road infrastructure. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on the shipper's declaration of weight without independent verification, especially when the driver has reason to believe the declared weight might be inaccurate or that the load configuration could lead to exceeding axle weight limits. While shippers have a responsibility to provide accurate information, the ultimate responsibility for operating a legally compliant vehicle rests with the driver. This approach fails to uphold the driver's duty of care and can lead to violations of Ontario's weight regulations. A third incorrect approach is to attempt to conceal the overweight condition, for example, by altering load distribution in a way that might circumvent visual inspection, but still results in exceeding legal axle weights. This is not only a violation of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, but also constitutes a fraudulent attempt to evade regulatory scrutiny, carrying severe penalties and ethical implications. Professional reasoning. Professionals in the transportation industry in Ontario should adopt a proactive and diligent approach to compliance. This involves a thorough understanding of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act and relevant regulations, including weight limits for different vehicle types and axle configurations. When faced with uncertainty about load weight, drivers should utilize available resources, such as weigh scales, and communicate with their dispatch and the shipper to ensure compliance. A commitment to safety and regulatory adherence should always supersede the pressure to complete a delivery quickly or at the lowest possible cost. The decision-making process should prioritize risk assessment, seeking clarification when necessary, and taking corrective action to ensure legal operation. Question 8. To address the challenge of ensuring vehicle modifications comply with Northland's stringent roadworthiness standards, a driver is considering installing a performance exhaust system. The driver has seen similar systems on vehicles in other provinces, and the seller claims it is legal. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance with Northland's Road Traffic Act? Option A. Rely on the advice of a mechanic who states that such aftermarket exhaust systems are generally acceptable. Option B. Proceed with the installation and hope that the vehicle will not be subject to inspection or scrutiny by Northland authorities. Option C. Contact the Northland Transport Authority, NTA, or an authorized vehicle inspector to confirm the exhaust system's compliance with Northland's specific noise and emission standards before installation. Option D. Install the exhaust system based on the seller's assurance of legality and observations of similar systems in other provinces. The correct answer is C. Contact the Northland Transport Authority, NTA, or an authorized vehicle inspector to confirm the exhaust system's compliance with Northland's specific noise and emission standards before installation. Explanation. The scenario presents a professional challenge for a driver in Northland due to the strict regulatory framework governing vehicle modifications and roadworthiness. The core of the challenge lies in balancing personal preference for vehicle enhancement with the absolute legal requirement to comply with Northland's Road Traffic Act and associated regulations concerning vehicle safety and emissions. Misinterpreting or disregarding these regulations can lead to significant legal repercussions, including fines, demerit points, and even the impoundment of the vehicle. Careful judgment is required to ensure any modifications are both legal and safe. The correct approach involves proactively seeking official guidance and ensuring all modifications are compliant with Northland's specific vehicle standards before undertaking them. This proactive stance demonstrates a commitment to regulatory compliance and public safety. Specifically, consulting the Northland Transport Authority, NTA, or an authorized vehicle inspector to confirm the legality of the proposed exhaust system, ensuring it meets all noise and emission standards outlined in the Northland Road Traffic Act, is the most responsible course of action. This aligns with the ethical duty of a driver to operate a safe and legal vehicle. An incorrect approach would be to assume that a common aftermarket part is automatically legal. This disregards the specific regulations of Northland, which may have stricter requirements than other jurisdictions, or may not have specific exemptions for certain types of modification. Relying on anecdotal evidence from online forums or the advice of a mechanic without verifying with the NTA is a failure to adhere to the principle of due diligence required by Northland law. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with the modification based solely on the seller's assurance of legality without independent verification. This shifts the burden of proof and responsibility onto the driver, who is ultimately accountable for operating a compliant vehicle. The seller's claims do not absolve the driver of their legal obligations under Northland's Road Traffic Act. Finally, proceeding with the modification and hoping it will not be noticed by authorities is a clear disregard for the law and a failure to uphold professional responsibility. This approach prioritizes personal convenience over legal and ethical obligations, potentially endangering other road users and contributing to environmental pollution if emission standards are not met. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Identifying the relevant regulations, Northland Road Traffic Act and NTA guidelines. 2. Assessing the proposed action against these regulations. 3. Seeking official clarification or approval if there is any ambiguity. 4. Prioritizing compliance and safety over personal preference or convenience. Question 9. Examination of the data shows that a driver in Ontario was involved in a minor collision where both parties agreed the damage was minimal, and the other driver expressed a strong desire to avoid involving police or insurance. What is the most appropriate course of action for the driver to take in this situation, considering the regulatory framework of Ontario? Option A. Agree with the other driver to not report the incident because the damage appears minor and the other driver is anxious. Option B. Accurately report the incident to the appropriate authorities as required by Ontario's Highway Traffic Act, regardless of the other driver's wishes or the perceived minor nature of the damage. Option C. Offer to pay for the repairs directly on the spot without any formal exchange of information or reporting. Option D. Exchange personal contact information and agree to handle repairs privately without involving law enforcement or insurance. The correct answer is B. Accurately report the incident to the appropriate authorities as required by Ontario's Highway Traffic Act, regardless of the other driver's wishes or the perceived minor nature of the damage. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a driver to balance the immediate need to assist a fellow road user with the legal and ethical obligations to report incidents accurately and in accordance with Ontario's Highway Traffic Act. Misrepresenting the situation, even with good intentions, can lead to serious consequences, including invalidating insurance claims and potentially facing penalties for providing false information. Careful judgment is required to ensure compliance while still acting responsibly. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves accurately reporting the incident to the authorities as required by law, regardless of the perceived severity or the other driver's wishes. This approach prioritizes legal compliance and ensures that all necessary information is recorded by the appropriate bodies. Specifically, Ontario's Highway Traffic Act mandates reporting of accidents involving damage exceeding a certain threshold or any injury. By reporting the incident, the driver fulfills their legal obligation, allows for proper documentation, and ensures that any subsequent insurance claims are handled based on factual information. This upholds the integrity of the legal and insurance systems. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to agree with the other driver to not report the incident because the damage appears minor and the other driver is anxious. This is a regulatory failure because it directly contravenes the reporting requirements of the Highway Traffic Act. It also creates an ethical issue by potentially misleading insurance companies if further damage is discovered later or if injuries manifest. Another incorrect approach is to exchange personal contact information and agree to handle repairs privately without involving law enforcement or insurance. This is a significant regulatory failure as it bypasses the legal requirement to report accidents. It also poses an ethical risk, as it can lead to disputes over repair costs and quality, and it leaves both parties without official documentation of the event, which can be crucial for future claims or disputes. A further incorrect approach is to offer to pay for the repairs directly on the spot without any formal exchange of information or reporting. This is problematic from a regulatory standpoint because it still fails to report the accident as legally required. Ethically, it can lead to underestimation of damages, potential disputes over the adequacy of the payment, and leaves no official record of the incident, which could impact insurance for either party if unforeseen issues arise. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes legal compliance above all else. When involved in a traffic incident, the first step should be to assess the situation for injuries and then determine if the damage meets the reporting threshold as defined by the relevant provincial legislation, in this case, Ontario's Highway Traffic Act. If reporting is required, the driver should proceed with reporting the incident to the appropriate authorities, regardless of the other party's preferences. This ensures transparency, accountability, and adherence to the law, while also protecting oneself and others involved. Question 10. Research into the fuel efficiency of a new model of sedan being introduced in Ontario reveals the manufacturer's reported figures for city driving are 8.5 liters per 100 kilometers, and for highway driving are 6.0 liters per 100 kilometers. The Ontario Ministry of Transportation mandates that the combined fuel consumption be calculated using a weighted average, where city driving accounts for 55% and highway driving accounts for 45% of the total. If a fleet manager needs to report the combined fuel efficiency for this model to the ministry, what is the correct combined fuel consumption in liters per 100 kilometers? Option A, 7, 50 liters per 100 kilometers. Option B, 7, 00 liters per 100 kilometers. Option C, 7, 35 liters per 100 kilometers. Option D, 7, 25 liters per 100 kilometers. The correct answer is C, 7, 35 liters per 100 kilometers. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the need to accurately calculate and report fuel efficiency data, which directly impacts compliance with Ontario's emission standards and potential consumer trust. Miscalculations can lead to fines, reputational damage, and incorrect environmental impact assessments. Careful judgment is required to ensure the chosen calculation method aligns with the specific requirements of the Ontario Ministry of Transportation's fuel efficiency reporting guidelines. The best professional practice involves using the standardized fuel consumption testing procedures as outlined by the Ontario Ministry of Transportation, which are based on internationally recognized methodologies. This approach ensures consistency, comparability, and regulatory adherence. Specifically, it requires using the official fuel consumption figures provided by the manufacturer, which are derived from rigorous, standardized testing protocols designed to reflect real-world driving conditions as closely as possible within a controlled environment. This method is correct because it directly fulfills the regulatory obligation to report fuel efficiency based on approved standards, preventing misrepresentation and ensuring that all vehicles are assessed on an equal footing according to provincial law. An incorrect approach would be to simply average the fuel consumption figures from two different driving conditions, e.g., highway and city, without applying the weighting factors specified by the Ontario Ministry of Transportation. This is incorrect because it ignores the regulatory requirement for a weighted average that reflects typical driving patterns, leading to a potentially inaccurate representation of overall fuel efficiency. Another incorrect approach is to use a proprietary fuel consumption calculator that is not officially recognized or validated by the Ontario Ministry of Transportation. This is incorrect as it bypasses the established regulatory framework for reporting, potentially resulting in non-compliant data and undermining the integrity of the reporting process. Finally, relying solely on anecdotal driver reports for fuel consumption is incorrect because it lacks the scientific rigor and standardization required by the ministry, making the data unreliable and non-compliant with provincial regulations. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and data integrity. This involves first identifying the specific reporting requirements of the relevant jurisdiction, Ontario Ministry of Transportation. Then, they should determine the approved methodologies and data sources for calculating fuel efficiency. Finally, they must apply these approved methods rigorously, ensuring all calculations are transparent and verifiable against the regulatory standards. Question 11. Which approach would be most appropriate for a driver in Ontario who is running late for an important appointment and encounters a series of red traffic lights and a need to cover distance quickly? Option A. Weave through traffic at an increased speed to navigate more efficiently and arrive on time. Option B. Disregard red traffic signals to avoid unnecessary stops and delays. Option C. Strictly adhere to all posted speed limits and traffic signals, accepting the potential for a later arrival. Option D. Exceed the posted speed limit to make up for lost time and reduce the risk of being late. The correct answer is C. Strictly adhere to all posted speed limits and traffic signals, accepting the potential for a later arrival. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to balance the immediate need to reach a destination with the overarching legal and safety obligations imposed by the Ontario Highway Traffic Act. The temptation to exceed the speed limit to make up for lost time is a common pressure, but adherence to traffic laws is paramount for public safety and to avoid legal repercussions. The best approach involves strictly adhering to the posted speed limits and traffic signals, even if it means arriving later than intended. This is correct because the Ontario Highway Traffic Act mandates compliance with all posted speed limits and traffic control devices. Section 128 of the Act defines the offense of speeding, and Section 183 outlines penalties for disobeying traffic control signals. Prioritizing safety and legal compliance over personal convenience is a fundamental ethical and regulatory requirement for all drivers in Ontario. This approach demonstrates responsible driving behavior and upholds the principles of road safety. An incorrect approach would be to exceed the speed limit to make up for lost time. This directly violates Section 128 of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, which prohibits driving at a speed greater than the posted limit. Such an action significantly increases the risk of accidents, endangering the driver and other road users, and carries penalties including fines and demerit points. Another incorrect approach would be to disregard a red traffic signal to avoid waiting. This contravenes Section 144 of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, which mandates stopping at a red light. Running a red light is a serious offense, leading to severe penalties and a high risk of T-bone collisions, which are often fatal. A further incorrect approach would be to weave through traffic at an unsafe speed. While not explicitly defined as a single offense, this behavior falls under the general duty to drive safely and prudently as outlined in Section 159 of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, and can also lead to charges such as careless driving under Section 130. It creates unpredictable situations for other drivers and significantly elevates the risk of collisions. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes legal compliance and safety above all else. This involves understanding the relevant traffic laws, assessing the risks associated with any potential deviation from those laws, and making choices that uphold public safety and personal responsibility. When faced with time pressures, the professional approach is to accept the delay and continue driving in a lawful and safe manner, rather than compromising safety and legality. Question 12. Benchmark analysis indicates that a client in Ontario wishes to install a specific aftermarket exhaust system on their vehicle, stating it is from a reputable manufacturer and they believe it is legal. What is the most appropriate regulatory compliance approach for a professional service provider in Ontario? Option A. Proceed with the installation as requested by the client, relying on the client's assertion that the modification is legal and assuming no issues will arise. Option B. Advise the client that the modification is permissible because it is sourced from a reputable manufacturer, assuming their products meet general industry standards. Option C. Recommend that the client seek independent legal counsel to determine the legality of the aftermarket exhaust system before any work is undertaken. Option D. Research Ontario's Highway Traffic Act and related regulations to confirm the aftermarket exhaust system meets all provincial noise emission standards and other applicable requirements before proceeding with installation. The correct answer is D. Research Ontario's Highway Traffic Act and related regulations to confirm the aftermarket exhaust system meets all provincial noise emission standards and other applicable requirements before proceeding with installation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a client's stated preference and the potential for that preference to lead to non-compliance with Ontario's Highway Traffic Act regulations concerning vehicle modifications. The driver's desire for a specific aesthetic modification, while understandable from a personal perspective, must be balanced against legal requirements designed for public safety. The professional's responsibility is to advise the client accurately and ethically, ensuring any modifications are legal and safe, rather than simply fulfilling the client's request without due diligence. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves thoroughly researching and verifying the legality of the proposed modification under Ontario's Highway Traffic Act and its associated regulations. This approach prioritizes compliance with established laws designed to ensure road safety by confirming that the aftermarket exhaust system meets Ontario's noise emission standards and any other relevant requirements, such as those pertaining to exhaust system integrity and protrusion. The professional acts ethically and legally. This proactive verification protects both the client from potential penalties and the public from potential hazards or nuisances associated with non-compliant modifications. Incorrect approaches analysis. Advising the client that the modification is permissible solely based on its availability from a reputable manufacturer is an incorrect approach. While manufacturer reputation is a factor, it does not guarantee compliance with specific provincial regulations. The manufacturer may be based in a jurisdiction with different standards, or the product might have been modified or installed in a way that violates Ontario law. This approach risks overlooking critical legal requirements. Proceeding with the installation without any verification, assuming the client's word that it is legal, is also an incorrect approach. This abdicates professional responsibility and places the burden of legal compliance entirely on the client, which is not how professional service operates. It fails to uphold the duty of care owed to the client and the public. Suggesting the client consult a legal professional for advice on vehicle modifications is an incorrect approach in this context. While legal advice is crucial for complex legal matters, the initial assessment of whether a specific vehicle modification complies with the Highway Traffic Act falls within the professional's area of expertise, or at least requires their initial investigation before escalating to legal counsel. This approach unnecessarily delays the process and shifts a responsibility that the professional should be able to address through regulatory research. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field should adopt a systematic approach to client requests involving vehicle modifications. This involves 1. Understanding the client's desired outcome. 2. Identifying relevant regulatory frameworks, in this case, Ontario's Highway Traffic Act and associated regulations. 3. Conducting thorough research to determine compliance with these regulations. 4. Clearly communicating findings to the client, including any limitations or necessary steps for compliance. 5. If compliance is not straightforward or requires interpretation beyond their expertise, then and only then recommending consultation with appropriate specialists, such as legal counsel or specialized engineers. The primary focus must always be on ensuring safety and legal adherence. Question 13. Benchmark analysis indicates that a client in Ontario who is approaching retirement has expressed a strong desire to withdraw a significant portion of their Registered Retirement Savings Plan (RRSP) funds to cover an unexpected personal expense. As a financial advisor, what is the most appropriate and compliant course of action to take in this situation? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive, documented meeting with the client to explain the tax implications, potential penalties, and long-term impact on their retirement security of an early RRSP withdrawal, ensuring their informed consent. Option B. Postpone a detailed discussion about the withdrawal implications until the client formally submits all necessary withdrawal paperwork. Option C. Advise the client on alternative investment vehicles outside of registered plans that might offer more flexible access to funds, even if it means bypassing RRSP withdrawal rules. Option D. Immediately process the withdrawal request, as per the client's instruction, to demonstrate responsiveness and client service. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive, documented meeting with the client to explain the tax implications, potential penalties, and long-term impact on their retirement security of an early RRSP withdrawal, ensuring their informed consent. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a client's stated preference and the regulatory requirements designed to protect vulnerable individuals. The advisor must navigate the client's desire for immediate access to funds with the legal obligation to ensure the client understands the implications of early withdrawal and to prevent potential financial harm or exploitation. This requires a delicate balance of client service and strict adherence to provincial regulations. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough, documented discussion with the client about the specific terms and consequences of early withdrawal from the Registered Retirement Savings Plan (RRSP) under Ontario law. This includes explaining the tax implications, potential penalties, and the impact on their long-term retirement security. The advisor must ensure the client fully comprehends these details and provides informed consent. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the advisor's fiduciary duty and compliance with Ontario's pension and financial services legislation, which mandates that financial professionals act in the best interest of their clients and provide clear, accurate information regarding financial products and withdrawals. Documenting this discussion serves as proof of due diligence and adherence to regulatory standards. Incorrect approach is analysis. Proceeding with the withdrawal based solely on the client's verbal request without a detailed discussion and documentation fails to meet the regulatory standard of care. This approach risks the client making an uninformed decision, potentially leading to significant financial detriment and regulatory scrutiny for the advisor. It violates the principle of informed consent and the advisor's duty to protect the client from foreseeable harm. Suggesting alternative, non-registered investment options to circumvent RRSP withdrawal rules is unethical and a serious regulatory breach. This circumvents the intended purpose of RRSP legislation and could be construed as facilitating tax evasion or misrepresentation. It prioritizes the advisor's potential gain over the client's long-term financial well-being and compliance with tax laws. Delaying the discussion until a formal withdrawal request is submitted without proactively educating the client on the implications is a passive approach that neglects the advisor's responsibility to provide proactive guidance. While not as egregious as the other incorrect approaches, it falls short of the expected standard of care in a regulated financial environment where client education is paramount. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a proactive and client-centric approach, prioritizing education and transparency. When a client expresses a desire for actions that have significant financial or regulatory implications, the professional's first step should be to thoroughly explain those implications, ensuring full comprehension. This involves a structured conversation, documentation of the discussion and client's understanding, and adherence to all relevant provincial laws and ethical codes. If a client's request conflicts with regulatory requirements or their own best interests, the professional must clearly articulate these concerns and guide the client towards compliant and beneficial solutions. Question 14. Benchmark analysis indicates that an investment advisor in Ontario has a client who is adamant about investing a significant portion of their retirement savings into a highly speculative, illiquid private equity fund. The advisor's initial review suggests this investment is far beyond the client's stated risk tolerance and financial capacity. What is the most appropriate course of action for the advisor to take? Option A. Recommend the investment to the client, assuming the client understands the risks involved and is willing to accept them, despite the advisor's initial assessment. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive suitability assessment, thoroughly document the client's financial situation, investment objectives, and risk tolerance, and then explain to the client why the proposed investment may not be suitable, offering alternative, more appropriate investment options. Option C. Immediately refuse to discuss the investment further with the client, citing regulatory concerns without providing specific explanations. Option D. Proceed with the investment as requested by the client, as their instructions are paramount and the advisor should not override their wishes. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive suitability assessment, thoroughly document the client's financial situation, investment objectives, and risk tolerance, and then explain to the client why the proposed investment may not be suitable, offering alternative, more appropriate investment options. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a client's explicit instructions and the advisor's ethical and regulatory obligations. The advisor must navigate the client's desire for a specific outcome with the paramount duty to ensure compliance with Ontario's securities regulations, specifically regarding suitability and fair dealing. Misjudging this situation could lead to regulatory sanctions, reputational damage, and harm to the client. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a thorough assessment of the client's financial situation, investment objectives, risk tolerance, and knowledge of investments. This approach aligns with the Ontario Securities Commission OSC, Rule 31-505, registration requirements, conduct trading and reporting, and the CSA's, Canadian Securities Administrators, focus on suitability. By gathering comprehensive information and documenting the rationale for any recommendation, the advisor upholds their fiduciary duty and ensures that the investment aligns with the client's best interests, even if it deviates from the client's initial, potentially unsuitable, request. This demonstrates a commitment to fair dealing and client protection, core tenets of regulatory compliance in Ontario. Incorrect approach is analysis. Recommending the specific high-risk investment without a comprehensive suitability assessment, despite the client's request, directly contravenes the OSC's suitability requirements. This approach prioritizes the client's stated preference over their actual financial well-being and regulatory mandates, potentially exposing the client to undue risk and the advisor to disciplinary action. Proceeding with the investment solely based on the client's insistence, without adequate due diligence, fails to meet the advisor's obligation to act in the client's best interest and could be construed as facilitating a transaction that is not suitable. Ignoring the client's request entirely and refusing to engage further without explaining the regulatory reasons for caution is also professionally deficient. while it avoids an unsuitable recommendation. It fails to educate the client and maintain a professional advisory relationship, potentially leading to the client seeking advice elsewhere and not receiving appropriate guidance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a client-centric approach that is firmly grounded in regulatory compliance. When faced with a client's request that appears to conflict with suitability requirements, the professional decision-making process should involve 1. Actively listening to and understanding the client's request and underlying motivations. 2. Conducting a thorough and documented suitability assessment based on the client's financial profile and objectives. 3. Clearly communicating the findings of the suitability assessment to the client, explaining any discrepancies between their request and what is deemed suitable, referencing relevant regulatory principles. 4. Collaborating with the client to find suitable investment alternatives that meet their objectives within their risk parameters. 5. Documenting all discussions, recommendations, and decisions. Question 15. The efficiency study reveals that the Northland Driver Testing Center in Ontario is experiencing delays in vehicle inspections due to the thoroughness of the process. Management is considering implementing a new protocol that allows inspectors to expedite inspections by skipping certain visual checks if the vehicle appears to be in good condition and the driver expresses urgency. Which of the following approaches best upholds regulatory compliance and professional responsibility in Ontario? Option A. Continue to perform all mandated inspection steps for every vehicle, ensuring full compliance with the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, and communicate any resource or time constraints to management. Option B. Implement the new protocol to expedite inspections by skipping visual checks on vehicles that appear to be in good condition, prioritizing driver convenience and reducing wait times. Option C. Document all required inspection steps as completed, even if some checks were not performed, to meet efficiency targets. Option D. Rely on the driver's verbal confirmation of the vehicle's condition and skip certain inspection steps to improve efficiency. The correct answer is A. Continue to perform all mandated inspection steps for every vehicle, ensuring full compliance with the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, and communicate any resource or time constraints to management. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a potential conflict between the need for timely service delivery and the adherence to the Ontario Highway Traffic Act's regulations concerning vehicle inspections. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing operational demands with legal obligations, where a failure to comply could result in penalties and compromise public safety. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all inspections are conducted thoroughly and in accordance with the law, even under pressure to increase throughput. The best approach involves prioritizing regulatory compliance by ensuring that all required inspection steps are completed for every vehicle, regardless of the perceived urgency or efficiency gains. This means allocating sufficient time for each inspection and not allowing any shortcuts that bypass mandated checks. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, which mandates specific inspection procedures to ensure vehicle roadworthiness and public safety. Adhering to these procedures is a legal requirement and an ethical imperative for licensed inspectors. An approach that suggests expediting inspections by skipping certain checks, even if the vehicle appears to be in good condition, is professionally unacceptable. This directly violates the Ontario Highway Traffic Act's inspection requirements and compromises the integrity of the inspection process, creates a significant ethical failure by potentially allowing unsafe vehicles onto the road, endangering other road users. Another unacceptable approach is to rely solely on the driver's assurance that the vehicle is in good condition without performing the mandated checks. This abdicates the inspector's responsibility and contravenes the legal framework. The purpose of the inspection is to provide an independent assessment of the vehicle's safety, not to take the driver's word for it. Finally, an approach that involves documenting completed inspections without actually performing them is a severe ethical and legal breach. This constitutes fraudulent activity and undermines the entire system of vehicle safety regulation in Ontario. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of all applicable regulations, such as the Ontario Highway Traffic Act. When faced with pressure to deviate from these regulations, they should first reaffirm the legal and ethical obligations. If operational pressures conflict with compliance, the professional should communicate these challenges to management, advocating for adequate resources and time to perform duties correctly. The ultimate decision must always prioritize legal compliance and public safety over efficiency metrics that could compromise these fundamental principles. Question 16. Benchmark analysis indicates that a driver in Ontario is running late for an important appointment and is currently driving on a provincial highway with a posted speed limit of 100 km/h. The traffic is light, and the weather conditions are clear. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure regulatory compliance and professional conduct? Option A. Drive at speed that feels subjectively safe and comfortable, even if it exceeds the posted limit. Option B. Maintain a speed of 100 km/h, adhering strictly to the posted speed limit. Option C. Increase speed to 110 km/h to make up for lost time, as traffic is light and conditions are good. Option D. Reduce speed only when encountering other vehicles on the road. The correct answer is B. Maintain a speed of 100 km/h, adhering strictly to the posted speed limit. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to balance the immediate need to reach a destination with the paramount importance of adhering to traffic laws and ensuring public safety. The temptation to speed, especially when running late, is a common human impulse that directly conflicts with the regulatory framework designed to prevent accidents and protect lives. A driver's judgment in such a situation is a critical test of their commitment to responsible driving and compliance with the Ontario Highway Traffic Act. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves prioritizing adherence to the posted speed limit, regardless of the perceived urgency. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with Section 128 of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, which mandates that drivers must not drive at a rate of speed that is faster than the posted limit or is unreasonable and improper for the conditions. Maintaining the legal speed limit is the fundamental regulatory requirement for safe operation of a vehicle and is ethically imperative to prevent harm to oneself and others. It demonstrates a commitment to the established rules of the road, which are designed for collective safety. Incorrect approaches analysis. Exceeding the speed limit to arrive on time is incorrect because it directly violates Section 128 of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act. This action creates an unacceptable risk of collision, as higher speeds reduce reaction time and increase stopping distances, making it more difficult to avoid hazards. Ethically, it disregards the safety and well-being of other road users. Driving at a speed that feels safe to the individual driver, even if it is above the posted limit, is incorrect. The posted speed limit is determined by traffic engineers based on road design, visibility, and typical traffic conditions. An individual's subjective assessment of safety does not override these established regulations and can lead to dangerous situations if their perception differs from the objective risks. Reducing speed only when encountering other vehicles is incorrect. While reduced speed is appropriate in certain traffic conditions, waiting for other vehicles to appear before slowing down to the legal limit is a reactive and insufficient safety measure. It implies a willingness to break the law until the risk of detection or immediate danger becomes apparent, rather than proactively adhering to regulations at all times. Professional reasoning. Professionals in any field, including driving, must operate within established legal and ethical boundaries. When faced with a conflict between personal convenience or perceived urgency and regulatory requirements, the professional decision-making process dictates that regulatory compliance and safety must always take precedence. This involves understanding the underlying reasons for the regulations, e.g., accident prevention, and consistently applying them, even when it may be inconvenient. A professional driver's commitment to the law and the safety of others is non-negotiable. Question 17. Benchmark analysis indicates that a driver in Ontario is running late for an important appointment and is concerned about the consequences of arriving past the scheduled time. Considering the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, which of the following approaches best demonstrates responsible and legally compliant driving behavior in this situation? Option A. Maintain the posted speed limit, even if it means arriving late for the appointment. Option B. Drive significantly over the posted speed limit to ensure arrival at the appointment on time. Option C. Drive at a speed that feels subjectively safe, irrespective of the posted speed limit. Option D. Exceed the posted speed limit by a small margin to try and make up some time. Correct answer is A. Maintain the posted speed limit, even if it means arriving late for the appointment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to balance the immediate need to reach a destination with the paramount importance of adhering to traffic laws designed for public safety. The temptation to exceed the speed limit due to perceived urgency is a common ethical dilemma for drivers. Careful judgment is required to prioritize safety and legal compliance over personal convenience or perceived necessity. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice is to maintain the posted speed limit, even when running late. This approach is correct because it directly adheres to the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, which mandates compliance with posted speed limits to ensure predictable traffic flow and minimize the risk of accidents. Ethically, it upholds the driver's responsibility to operate a vehicle in a manner that does not endanger themselves or others. This aligns with the fundamental principle of public safety that underpins all traffic regulations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Exceeding the speed limit by a small margin to make up time is professionally unacceptable. This violates the Ontario Highway Traffic Act and increases the risk of losing control of the vehicle, reducing reaction time, and exacerbating the severity of any potential collision. It demonstrates a disregard for the law and the safety of other road users. Driving significantly over the speed limit to arrive on time is also professionally unacceptable. This action represents a severe breach of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, significantly increasing the likelihood of a serious accident. It demonstrates a profound lack of judgment and a failure to prioritize public safety, potentially leading to severe legal consequences and harm to others. Driving at a speed that feels safe, regardless of the posted limit, is professionally unacceptable. While subjective safety is a consideration, the posted speed limits are determined by traffic engineers based on road conditions, visibility, and traffic volume to ensure optimal safety for all. Disregarding these established limits, even with good intentions, can lead to unpredictable interactions with other drivers and an increased risk of collision. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes legal compliance and public safety above all else. When faced with time constraints, the professional approach involves planning ahead to avoid such situations or accepting the consequences of being late. The framework should include 1. Understanding and internalizing the relevant traffic laws, e.g., Ontario Highway Traffic Act. 2. Recognizing the ethical imperative to protect oneself and others. 3. Evaluating the risks associated with any deviation from legal and safe practices. 4. Making a conscious choice to adhere to regulations, even when inconvenient. Question 18. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a minor collision occurring at the intersection of Main Street and Elm Avenue in Northland. As you approach this intersection, what is the most appropriate course of action to ensure regulatory compliance and safe driving? Option A. Increase vigilance, scan for potential hazards, and be prepared to adjust speed or position to avoid any developing risks. Option B. Come to a complete stop before the intersection to assess the situation, even if the traffic signal is green and there are no immediate obstructions. Option C. Focus solely on maintaining the exact posted speed limit, as this is the primary regulatory requirement for navigating intersections. Option D. Proceed through the intersection at the posted speed limit, assuming the risk matrix is a general guideline and not applicable to immediate driving decisions. The correct answer is A. Increase vigilance, scan for potential hazards, and be prepared to adjust speed or position to avoid any developing risks. Explanation. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a minor collision occurring at a specific intersection within Northland. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to balance adherence to traffic laws with proactive risk mitigation, especially when faced with potentially ambiguous situations or the actions of other road users. Careful judgment is required to interpret the risk matrix's implications for immediate driving decisions. The best approach involves a heightened state of vigilance and defensive driving techniques. This means actively scanning the intersection for potential hazards, anticipating the movements of other vehicles and pedestrians, and being prepared to adjust speed or position to avoid a collision. This aligns with the fundamental principles of safe driving and the implicit duty of care expected of all licensed drivers in Northland, which emphasizes preventing accidents through foresight and cautious action, even when no immediate violation is apparent. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the risk matrix information as purely theoretical and proceed through the intersection without any increased caution. This fails to acknowledge the proactive nature of risk management in driving and could lead to a failure to react appropriately to a developing hazard, potentially resulting in an accident. Another incorrect approach would be to overreact to the risk matrix by coming to a complete stop before the intersection, regardless of traffic signals or other vehicles. A caution is important. Unnecessary obstruction of traffic flow can create its own hazards and is not in line with the expected responsible operation of a vehicle. Finally, an approach that involves focusing solely on maintaining the posted speed limit without considering the intersection's specific risks, as indicated by the matrix, is also professionally unacceptable. The risk matrix suggests a localized increase in potential danger, requiring a driver to adapt their behavior beyond simply adhering to the general speed limit. Professionals should use a decision-making framework that integrates all available information, including risk assessments like the matrix, with real-time observation of the driving environment. This involves a continuous cycle of perception, prediction, decision, and execution, prioritizing safety and compliance with Northland's traffic regulations. Question 19. Benchmark analysis indicates that a driver in Ontario is running late for a critical business meeting and is concerned about the consequences of arriving late. The posted speed limit on the highway is 100 km/h. What is the most appropriate course of action for the driver to ensure regulatory compliance and professional conduct? Option A. Maintain a speed of 100 km/h or below, prioritizing adherence to the posted speed limit. Option B. Drive at a speed that feels subjectively safe and comfortable, even if it exceeds the posted limit. Option C. Accelerate to a higher speed when a police vehicle is observed ahead, then slow down once past it. Option D. Increase speed to 110 km/h to make up for lost time, as this is only slightly over the limit. The correct answer is A. Maintain a speed of 100 km/h or below, prioritizing adherence to the posted speed limit. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to balance the immediate need to reach their destination with the paramount importance of adhering to traffic laws designed for public safety. The temptation to exceed the speed limit to make up for lost time, especially when facing a potential consequence like being late for an important appointment, creates a conflict between personal urgency and legal/ethical obligations. Careful judgment is required to prioritize safety and compliance over personal convenience. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves strictly adhering to the posted speed limit, regardless of the perceived urgency or potential consequences of being late. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the fundamental principles of road safety and regulatory compliance, mandated by the Ontario Highway Traffic Act. The Act's speed limits are established based on factors like road conditions, visibility, and traffic density to minimize the risk of accidents and protect all road users. Prioritizing adherence to these limits demonstrates a commitment to public safety and fulfills the driver's legal responsibility. Incorrect approach is analysis. Exceeding the speed limit by a small margin to make up for lost time is professionally unacceptable because it directly violates the Ontario Highway Traffic Act. Even a minor infraction increases the risk of an accident and demonstrates a disregard for the law and the safety of others. This approach prioritizes personal convenience over public safety and legal obligations. Driving at a speed that feels safe and comfortable, even if it is above the posted limit, is also professionally unacceptable. The posted speed limits are not suggestions, but legal requirements based on objective safety assessments. A driver's subjective feeling of safety does not negate the legal mandate or the inherent risks associated with exceeding the established limits, which are designed to account for a range of potential hazards and driver capabilities. Accelerating significantly when seeing a police vehicle in the distance, even if the driver was previously driving at or below the speed limit, is professionally unacceptable. While not a direct violation of the speed limit itself, this action can be interpreted as an attempt to evade scrutiny or suggest prior wrongdoing. It can also lead to erratic driving behavior and create a hazard for other road users. Furthermore, it demonstrates a lack of focus on maintaining a consistent and safe driving pattern. Professional reasoning. Professionals in any field, including driving, must operate within established legal and ethical frameworks. When faced with a situation where personal urgency conflicts with these frameworks, the professional decision-making process dictates prioritizing compliance and safety. This involves a clear understanding of the relevant regulations, in this case, the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, an assessment of the risks associated with non-compliance, and a commitment to upholding public safety. The decision should be based on objective legal requirements rather than subjective feelings or personal pressures. Question 20. Benchmark analysis indicates that a commercial truck operating in Northland has a gross vehicle weight rating, GVWR, of 30,000 kg. The truck has 3 axles. The front axle has a maximum allowable weight of 7,000 kg. The first rear axle has a maximum allowable weight of 12,000 kg, and the second rear axle has a maximum allowable weight of 12,000 kg. If the truck is loaded with 28,000 kg of cargo, what is the maximum total weight the truck can legally carry, including the weight of the truck itself, according to Northland's Road Traffic Act? Option A, 30,000 kg. Option B, 28,000 kg. Option C, 34,000 kg. Option D, 31,000 kg. The correct answer is D, 31,000 kg. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a driver in Northland who is operating a commercial vehicle. The challenge lies in accurately calculating the total allowable load for their vehicle, considering both the gross vehicle weight rating, GVWR, and the axle weight limits, while adhering to Northland's specific traffic regulations. Failure to do so can result in significant fines, vehicle impoundment, and potential safety hazards on the road. Precise mathematical application of regulatory limits is paramount. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a multi-step calculation that prioritizes the most restrictive weight limit. First, determine the maximum allowable weight based on the GVWR of the truck. Second, calculate the maximum allowable weight based on the sum of the individual axle weight limits. The legally permissible gross vehicle weight is the lesser asterisk of these two calculated values. This approach ensures compliance with Northland's Road Traffic Act, which mandates that no vehicle shall exceed its GVWR or the sum of its axle weight limits, whichever is more restrictive. This method directly addresses the core regulatory requirement of preventing overload on either the vehicle as a whole or its individual components. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to solely consider the GVWR of the truck and disregard the individual axle weight limits. This is a regulatory failure because Northland's Road Traffic Act explicitly sets limits for each axle to prevent excessive stress on road infrastructure and maintain vehicle stability. Truck might be within its GVWR but still exceed an axle limit, leading to a violation. Another incorrect approach is to sum the individual axle weight limits and assume this is the maximum allowable gross weight without comparing it to the GVWR. This is also a regulatory failure. The GVWR is a manufacturer-specified limit for the entire vehicle's safe operating capacity, including the chassis, engine, and other components. Exceeding the GVWR, even if individual axle limits are met, can compromise the vehicle's structural integrity and safe operation. A third incorrect approach is to simply add the GVWR to the sum of the axle weight limits. This is mathematically and regulatorily unsound. It does not reflect any established regulatory principle for determining maximum load and would invariably lead to an overloaded vehicle, violating both GVWR and potentially axle weight regulations. Professional reasoning. Professionals must adopt a systematic approach to weight calculations. This involves 1. Identifying all relevant regulatory weight limits, GVWR and individual axle limits. 2. Performing the necessary calculations for each limit. 3. Critically comparing the calculated values to determine the most restrictive limit. 4. Ensuring the actual load does not exceed this most restrictive limit. This methodical process, grounded in a thorough understanding of the specific jurisdiction's regulations, is essential for safe and compliant operation.